Hello and welcome to a Dorks episode of Deck Tech. I'm Denied Forever, and today our guest here is Corey, one of our initial guests we had on the show of episode 1. Today he's brought his deck Dragon with him to give us a good old Deck Tech on it. How you doing today, Corey?
Fantastic, D9. How are you?
I'm doing good myself. Now, we're going to move right into it. Corey does not have a camera set up, so we're not going to get to see his face today, but we will get to see his deck, so we will go ahead and get right into that. All right. Now, to get started with the Deck Tech today, why don't you introduce the deck and tell us what inspired this deck? Was it the Dragon itself or any other specific cards?
I love the Dragon. When I had started playing Magic way back in, well, that's way back now, the early 2000s, when EDH first started to really come out and about as a social format, I had a Scion of the Dragon deck. And it was alright, and it did a whole bunch of like graveyard techie stuff where Scion would throw stuff to the yard and you'd recur it back. And then when the Dragon came out in Commander 17, it changed everything I wanted to do with it. The Eminence ability is insane, and just the fact that your dragons cost 1 less from the command zone is huge. So I just took the deck from there, and I got away from the graveyard strategy as much as it used to be, and I got into reducing the cost of big, scaly, fire-breathing monsters.
Everybody definitely enjoys having some fun with dragons. Is your general strategy here different from usual Dragon decks, or is it just about playing big, scary monsters?
It's basically about playing big, scary monsters. I don't know if it's too different from any other Dragon decks. The way I see it, it kind of plays more along the lines of a Slivers type strategy. A lot of the dragons in the deck all work with each other. They'll have, whenever a dragon enters the battlefield ability, or whenever another dragon attacks ability. So the more dragons you end up sticking, the better and better and better all of their abilities work with each other.
Sliver's definitely a good strategy. Making them dragons can't make it much worse. I do notice, though, that you have quite a high mana curve with this. Did you find a way to get around that, and how well does that work for you?
Yeah, so the average mana value in this deck is 3.9, which is insane. My way to get around that is I have a decent little suite of Dorks, which we love here on Mana Dorks. And I also have some cost reducers. So Eminence from the command zone, dragons cost 1 less no matter what. But I also have Urza's Incubator, which makes you can name whatever creature type. In this case, you're always going to choose dragons. That'll make them cost 2 less. I have a Dragon Lord's Servant. That makes your dragons cost 1 less. Dragon Speaker Shaman makes your dragons cost 2 less. Sarkhan Soul of Flame, dragons cost 1 less. So the more of these I stack, the cheaper and cheaper and cheaper my dragons are getting. So when you're casting a 6 mana dragon for 2 or 3, it's pretty impactful. It really helps drive that mana curve down.
When you're kind of opening up in a game and you're getting ready to take off with the Dragon, what would you say is kind of ideal cards to have in your opening hand? What do you like to see the most?
It's definitely a slow deck to get up off the ground, unfortunately, even with the Mana Dorks and the cost reducers. So I really aim to keep a hand with 3 land and some fixing. 3 land and a couple of Dorks, 3 land and some fetching, just to make sure the deck is spinning. It plays all 10 fetches, all 10 shocks, 2 OG duels that I had kicking around. Just to make sure that, I mean, it's a 5-color deck. It needs to get up and off the ground. So your mana fixing your first few turns is the most important thing you can do.
Very important to make sure you have the colors you need. We all know 5-color decks, how they like to run. I personally big fan of Progenitus myself. Do you have any powerful synergies that you like to use in this deck, or even just synergies that you prefer to have?
I have a couple of them. So one neat little trick that I managed to get in here is Morphon the Boundless and Fist of Suns. So Fist of Suns says you can pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost of spells I cast. Morphon the Boundless says you can pay Wooburg instead of something's casting cost. So with Fist of the Suns and Morphon the Boundless, I can cast my dragons for free, which is awesome. And I also have Volrath's Stronghold and Scion of the Ur Dragon. So with Scion of the Ur Dragon, I can fetch a creature from the graveyard, or from the deck, put it in the graveyard, and then for 2 mana and tapping Volrath, I put the creature back on top of my library. So I get the creature in a Scion copy for 1 turn, and then hopefully get that creature back as my draw for the next turn to recur it.
I know you've gotten free dragons off on us before. I don't remember if it was episode 1 before, but I know you've gotten those free dragons off on us before. Are there any cards in this deck? I know you said you had cut one recently, but are there any other cards that are on kind of the chopping block that you feel like just don't belong?
I don't know yet. I really don't. I'm still tinkering kind of with the top end of this. I have a small stack of cards that are on the in and out, and really trying to fine tune it depending on our meta. Seems to be, one way where if I'm going to start playing it, certain LGSs, their meta might be a little bit different, and I might make a little bit of tweaks here and there, depending on, do I want to be making more treasure tokens? Do I want to be trying to ramp a little earlier? Do I want more counter magic? So I kind of like it where it is now. I mean, playing against our current meta, I end up being archenemy 9 times out of 10, so there's almost nothing I can do to this deck right now that people are going to let it stick around for very long. But I do like the way the list is set. I like the way the deck runs. It's a ton of fun.
Perfect. I was actually just about to ask you how you thought it performed in the current meta, and it sounds like you're saying that it performs at a reasonable level that you like.
It definitely does. It's a deck that, it commands respect at the table. If it starts to pop off early, you are, again, like I said earlier, you are the archenemy. Almost everything in the deck flies, which that's a huge thing in Commander right now. Flying creatures win games. These are very big flying creatures. They synergize with each other really well. The deck has an alright sweeper package. Nothing crazy, but some of the dragons themselves are sweepers in their own right. So it can put a lot of pressure on everybody at the table at the same time.
It's definitely a terrifying deck every time I've gone up against it. Have you ever had any memorable moments with this deck that really stick with you?
I did have one game where I managed to have, actually right here, a Dragon Tempest with a Terror of the Peaks and a Scourge of Valkus all on board all at the same time. And I can't remember now if it was Lathlis or Vara Hellkite, but I was consistently making tokens, and it was triggering everything every time a single creature would hit the board, and it just cleared the field.
That would definitely stick with me too. What would be the best advice you can give to somebody who wants to build kind of a similar deck to this?
I don't want to say don't, but it's such a hard deck to build strictly on the mana base. If you don't have lands that consistently come in untapped early, and if you don't have the mana fixing to get there, this deck is just so hard to get off the ground. It's so slow. It's a commander that people are afraid of. It's an archetype that people are afraid of. So you become the target every time you sit down at a table.
So your advice is more mental. You have to get into a mindset where you know you're going to be slow, you know you're going to be arch enemy, and you just have to be prepared to be able to handle that. Less about the deck, although you said mana fixing is important, and more about, hey, I just need to be ready to be the threat.
Yeah, 100%. I sit down with this deck when I want to have fun, and in the back of my mind, I don't want to say I don't expect this deck to win. This deck can win, this deck will win, this deck should win. But because of that, you end up being the target 9 times out of 10, and you're just along for the ride. So sit down, shuffle up, and have a ton of fun, because this deck can get out of hand fast, and it can make you pretty salty if people are trying to take care of all your stuff.
All right, well, I think we're encroaching on the end here. Is there any final words about the deck you want to leave everybody with, or just saying goodbye?
No, I think I've said my piece on the Dragon.
Well, I thank you very much for coming on for our deck tech with us, and always appreciate playing with you. Can't wait to get another stream with you coming up here.
Absolutely, I'm excited for it.
I want to thank everybody for coming out today and watching this episode of Deck Tech on Mana Dorks. I want to thank Corey especially for coming out and showing us his deck and giving us a good tour of the Dragon. Of course, you can find us doing other deck techs as well as proper games at Mana Dorks, the official Mana Dorks on YouTube, as well as finding live games for Mana Dorks hosted by the Necro Ninja on Twitch. Links will be in the description. Thank you all again, and have a good day. Peace.